It is not enough in business to mean well. It is not enough in business to work hard. You can do everything right and still have it all taken away from you. Our guest today grew a business where he had over 100 agents working for him and had it all vaporize on him. And in the first half, we're going to dig into what he did and what the emotional roller coaster of that was like. My intention here is to give you a fighting chance. If you are a founder and in this difficult situation, what do you do? So by hearing Marc's story, you'll be able to recognize, I hope, the symptoms of what's going on and make some different choices. The second half of the interview gets into the business that Marc is running now, where he is running a group and a program for helping coaches clarify their market and find clients. So let's dig in. We are back for another lean and mean episode of the Cold Star Project. We're here with Marc Mawhinney, the guy who runs Natural Born Coaches. He has been through some iterations in his life and scaled and lost it all and come back swinging. So I love that. I want to dig into the story. I think what we could talk about today is scaling your processes. What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
Okay. So you ran a real estate business prior to 2008, a major year in the real estate world. Tell us a little bit about what you did there.
I like that you say several iterations in my life, because that sounds better than colossal F-ups and failures. In a nutshell, my past life was in real estate. I've been coaching now for almost 5 years. But in real estate, I started back in 2000 as a fresh-faced 21-year-old kid. And really, I looked about 15. And over the course of the decade, I built my business up. And I built it up starting with 1 or 2 agents on my team, and then it grew to 15 or so. And then eventually, by the beginning of 2009, I started my own brokerage, which grew to 100 agents and employees, and then came crashing down later that year. I'm sure we'll get into it. But ironically, I started the business after the 2008 hiccups that you guys experienced. I'm in Canada, and what's the saying that in Canada we say when the U.S. sneezes, we catch a cold. Just takes a little while to reach Canada.
Sure. I mean, I left Canada around that time. I left in 2009. So it had happened.
Yeah.
And then I got down here and found everything was just desolate, right?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be finding a new job and, or starting a company and that, and there's really nothing. I mean, it was great for sales training.
What's really weird for me, I knew what was going on with the '08 stuff in the U.S. because I follow the news and all that stuff. Yeah. Maybe it's because I was a cocky, I was going to say 20-something kid, but by then I was around 30. But I kind of had this, which is good for an entrepreneur to have, but it can also be bad. I had this total confidence in myself because I'd never failed. Every year my commissions numbers were doubling, and it was just, growth. And I kind of bought into my own press, I guess, that, hey, I could do nothing wrong. So screw those minor economic hiccups in the U.S. We'll be fine. I was looking more at my own economy with myself, and that seemed like the logical step. And Monday morning quarterback, it's always easier playing that, right? I would have done things differently, but I wasn't scared off by what was going on in the U.S. because, of course, there were in real estate, it's a common thing that's said. It's not always true, but a lot of agents have their best years when the market crashes because it weeds out the weaker agents and it leaves more for the strong agents. So I wasn't scared off by that, but it definitely had an impact on us. So the first month or two that my brokerage was open, 2009, our market was crap, and it still hasn't recovered really, but it really took a big hit in 2009.
Scary. But I know, the Canada bubble, what that feels like. And that also, I appreciate though, the sense of self-determination, right? That I believe that's really important for an entrepreneur. So you're getting up towards 100 people here who are working for you. Tell us a little bit about the systems, the communication, the standards. How are you managing all these people, or are they just kind of free to run?
Well, anyone who knows real estate knows in a lot of ways they're more like free agents. They're
Mm-hmm.
not the typical employees. So while I had employees that were working admin duties, I had a property management company that worked under the roof, a mortgage company, a lawn care company, and for some reason a home staging company. God knows what. I just basically anything housing related. Let's do it. With real estate agents, they're much more the independent contractor, solopreneur almost, right? They're each their own little business. The tricky thing for us was we grew so quickly because one day we've got 15 agents, which was a tight, cohesive unit, good agents and all that.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, bang, I'm like, okay, who's that person? Did we hire that person or did they just come in off the street? No, we hired them because I had, managers and stuff handling the hiring, and I wasn't prepared for that kind of growth. I was used to managing a small real estate team,
Mm-hmm.
not several offices spread out over a couple markets and all these people, right? And that was part of the problem. That was my fault. I learned a hard lesson that way. But yeah, the growth was too much, and it was a case of growing too big too fast. So.
Tell us about the hard lesson you learned. I want to hear about that.
Oh, boys, how much time do we have?
Get into it.
I've always said that I've learned more in those couple of years because I had the '09 closure, got back into real estate doing flipping and stuff like that. That didn't work out. In 2012, I just said, okay, I'm washing my hands of real estate. I'm done, not having fun. And that eventually led to me starting coaching in 2014. But I always say that in that couple year period where I was struggling, I learned probably more than all those years with no challenges or no struggles or very few. So what was a hard lesson? Unfortunately, not to be a pessimist, but I tend to, I'm a fan of thick face, black heart. So I'm not the woo woo, everybody loves you and they're all in it for you or whatever. I'm much more, humans are by nature interested in themselves. They're for self-preservation. And that's one thing I learned from that closure is who I would consider a friend and who wasn't a friend, because a lot of people bolted. Once the gravy train stopped, they were moved on. So, I guess I would say that I became a little bit more cynical towards people. Even today, I take a different view of people, where before I had subscribed to that view that you read in business books all the time, that, hey, you treat your people well, give them good bonuses, incentives, and all this other stuff, and they'll love you forever. That's not the case. A big reason why we closed was I was too generous, with the contests, with giving agents big screen TVs and bonuses and all that stuff. I should have been tighter on paying out, but that's life.
Interesting. Any other big lessons that stand out?
Other than what I mentioned, that you got to be careful growing too big, too fast. And that is a challenge for entrepreneurs. Every day we have to build our own, like they talk about with Steve Jobs, reality distortion field, because if not, we wouldn't be able to do this every single day. And I'm reading a book currently, actually listening to the audio version about Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos. You know her whole situation?
Not so much.
Anyone wants to Google it. She was the wonder kid of Silicon Valley. She had a technology that would allow for testing of blood. You take a little prick of blood and put it into a machine, and you could find out all this stuff. They end up finding out it was basically like a fraud, and everything collapsed, and now she's in legal trouble. And I'm listening to the audiobook now, and she was very much like that with an entrepreneur, where she just she was go, go, go. This is going to work out. And she ignored a lot of glaring problems and kept pushing bigger and bigger. And I think that's a challenge for entrepreneurs, is how do you be aggressive, but you also have to protect your backside while you're doing it. And that can be a tricky balance to try to achieve.
So even though you may have this company that you're a founder of and great people that work with you, if there's a bit of a downturn or some bumpy roads ahead, you may find that they're not as much of your friends as you thought.
Well, the saying I've heard in real estate, the nice ones stab you in the front, So at the yearly Christmas parties, everyone's hugging and everyone's all friends. And when they're out at earshot, it's like, oh, did you hear about her? She's cheating on her husband with so-and-so. Oh, he's got a drug problem. She's doing this. And they're just like, Not saying everyone's like that. There's some great agents out there, but being a commission, especially commission-based industry where everyone's fighting for those commissions, it can get very testy. So one of the things I love about coaching, I'm not trying to say we're all dancing around a bonfire singing Kumbaya and we love each other all the time. I don't know if you found this, but I find that it's a much more collaborative environment. So if Jason gets a client, where are you now? Are you in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you get a client in North Carolina, I'm not grumbling, thinking, oh, geez, Jason just took food off my plate, grumble. Compared to real estate in the same market, if somebody gets a listing, oh, gee, I talked to that person before. Why did they list with them? That just, you're envisioning the lost commissions from that. Coaching is much more collaborative.
Interesting. If you had to do it all over again, what kinds of standards or processes would you use when it came to hiring?
I think overall that we hired good people, and I'm not trying to blame the people we brought on at the end. It was the problem, or the mistake that I made, was assuming that if you have, let's say, 15 agents making X amount of commissions, I made the mistake of assuming, okay, well, if we have, let's say, 60 agents, then they're going to be making 4 times what those 15 agents were, right? Because you just multiply it by 4. That's not the case. There's that law of diminishing returns. It's going to take those newer agents coming on later a while to get rolling with it. So we're in a tough position where we had to grow because we're off on our own, and we had to be aggressive with growth. So you have to bring in people, and but it takes time to train them and for them to get going. We didn't have the luxury of time. So I don't know if I would have changed much with the actual hiring part of it. I had some great people on the team. It was more my mistake not giving a long enough runway to really get going. And there were a few factors that popped up in 2009 that were local factors, not just the 08 recession in the US, but we had a number of big energy projects in my market that were set to go billions of dollars. New nuclear power plant, new oil refinery was set. All these major projects, every single one got canceled. Just bang, bang, bang. So that was a big issue. That January and February, we had really, go figure in Canada, January and February, crappy weather, but extremely crappy weather. So sales in, I think it was February of 09, were like half of what normally the local real estate market would have had. So even though our market share was great when we compared it to where other companies were and all that stuff, we weren't getting the number of sales we need because the overall number of sales for the whole market were down. So, I mean, there's a few things there.
I could see something like that happening in the SaaS world as well. Looking at it again with the Monday morning quarterback kind of idea, given that there was this lurch in your business that had huge negative results, right? What would you do differently? Is there anything that you could do to plan ahead?
It's funny. I had a lot of rumors and whispers when we closed that, oh, Mark skipped town with everyone's commissions. He's on an island down south and all this stuff. And I heard someone say this, and I said, I wish I would have done that now, looking back. There's my Monday morning quarterback, and it would have been on some island on the beach. Instead of, stupid me, I kept my phone number, my, same phone number, and I was trying to work with the government to get the commissions paid out because, long story, local real estate association didn't have any mechanism to didn't want to collect the commissions. They didn't want to touch them. They're radioactive. They said, you're out of business, but we don't know how to get them out. So for 7 months, my life was on hold. And part of me thinks that was the right thing to do, but there's part of me that thinks, you know what, maybe I should have just changed my phone number and said, F off, don't talk to me. I got to move on with my life. But anyways, I don't know. I think that the number one of the big things for entrepreneurs is you have to keep that nest egg. And I didn't do that. I was throwing everything into the business because that was my baby. And I thought that's the right thing to do. But I could see the advantage for having that good sized rainy day fund, or I've heard it called a screw you fund. So you don't have to take on clients you don't want to work with, that as well. I would say put away some money for a rainy day because it's not always going to be good times. And our market was going up for about a decade. It was consistently going up, and then bang, it went down fast. The good times aren't always going to last. That's not me being pessimistic, being realistic.
No. And I've had programs that I sold online in front of a target market that would sell at a certain rate for a while and years, and you would think this was going on forever, and then it dries up. Eventually demand disappears.
We want to ignore those signs, right? We want to assume that it's always going to be good. So, okay, well, if we made, $250,000 this year, we're going to make 350 next year, and then we're going to make 450 or 500. Doesn't always work like that.
Right, despite all the effort that we put in. The universe and your competition does not care how much effort you put in.
Yeah, that's the advantage that we talked about, hindsight, but also age and experience. Because when I started business and real estate, I was fresh out of university. Like I said, I was 21 years old. You haven't experienced enough of life, and I don't want to be one of these people who mock 20-year-old life coaches, because you see people not mocking them all the time in my current thing. But there's something to be said for someone who's lived through the ups and downs. So if I could hop in a DeLorean, go back to 2008, 2009, and talk to Mark from back then, that was, roughly 10 years ago. I've learned an awful lot in 10 years. I wouldn't make a lot of the mistakes that I'd made. But at the time, I was doing what I thought was best, right? Because that's all I could do. You can't look in the crystal ball or whatever. So experience is very valuable.
There is a great temptation when things are going really bad to die with honor. Go down with the ship like Captain Smith of the Titanic.
Oh, God. Well, remember the poster with the little kitten hanging on the clothesline? Hang in there? That's what I was in 2009. Right up until the day the business closed, that was when I probably sunk in the, hey, Mark, it's dead. Up to then, anyone looking from the outside would be like, hey, you're done. Just close up shop. Me, I'm like, nope, hang in there. Typical entrepreneur.
One more roll of the dice.
Well, there's another lesson. If anyone listening is going through a rough time, and let's say they're literally killing themselves, not eating, not sleeping, they're stressed out, they're just not having fun, there's nothing wrong with giving up. I know it gets a bad reputation, and I hate giving up anything. But there's some things you shouldn't stick with. And it's a little melodramatic to say real estate was killing me. But right when the business closed, me, I'm not like a huge guy. I don't have a ton of weight to afford to lose. I lost 30 pounds in that like short little span. You could literally take my jeans with the belt on the tightest rung, and you could pull my jeans down. Right. I just honestly, it looked like I was like Tom Hanks in Castaway. I'd been on an island, with Wilson, the volleyball for a while. At one point, the business closed on a Tuesday. I hadn't eaten between that Wednesday and Sunday night. Sunday night, I thought, when did I eat last? Wow. I was surviving on 5-hour energy shots. Remember, those little, that was my diet. So actually, if anyone wants to lose weight, maybe it's better to go to the gym and eat healthier. The other thing is to build up a big business and then go through a stressful closure. And there's another way to lose weight. I wouldn't recommend it.
Good deal.
I can say that I found the weight, though. I did come back eventually, but it wasn't healthy. I just looked like a walking zombie. I was pasty white, sleeping 20 minutes a night, literally 20, 30 minutes. And it was awful. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's not fun.
Right. Wow. I want to get out of this negative zone into the coaching business.
Have you had anyone like blow their heads off during an interview or no?
No.
Okay. We'll talk about it. But the reason I say this is because everyone tries to make it sound like business is perfect, right?
Unicorns and rainbows.
So I'm just keeping it real, but I could say that everything happens for a reason. I'm much happier today, and I'm glad that it happened. I would change some things that happened with it, but I'm much happier with coaching now. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't know you. If I would be a real estate agent in New Brunswick, Canada, right? If that hadn't happened. So everything happens for a reason.
Good deal. So if you get stuck with a mechanism that's your business and this is the only way you can earn revenue, and you start getting locked into that mindset of this is it, this is the only thing I've got, you do have an option. You have billions of options. Just drop that thing. If it's horrible.
Well, don't pigeonhole yourself. I pigeonholed myself into thinking I was a quote real estate guy because that's all I'd done since university. So I thought I had to do real estate. You don't have to do it. It'd be pretty boring if you did the same thing for 80 years or however long you live, right? Now, unfortunately for me, coaching wasn't what it was back then, but the opportunity, a lot of things I did in real estate prepared me for coaching. Even something simple like I did a daily blog, a daily real estate blog. I now do daily emails for my coaching business. I can do that because I was used to writing a daily blog back in real estate. So daily emails are nothing for me. I can pound them out quickly. So there you go.
Yeah, the 20-minute habit.
Yeah, that's
Get
right.
used to it. So let's move into the coaching business, which you're running now. You help coaches grow their businesses.
Yes.
That is the main thing.
With no paid ads. That's a thing I always put on the joiner. So it's all organic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you've got a great group called the Coaching Jungle.
Thank you.
On Facebook, which people could go join and maybe learn something in.
Yeah. We're not as pessimistic in the group. I'm actually a very positive guy. So Jay, you're like my therapist or something. I'm on the couch. I've never been to a therapist, but I'm on the couch. You're asking me questions. So.
Right. Well, I want to share the real challenges and struggles in scaling a company, and that it's not always going to work out. Sometimes you get kicked in the nuts. What do you do about it? Right.
Yeah. That's life.
Don't take it so bad. Right. It's just business in a sense.
It's funny because there's and I know people will roll their eyes because it sounds so cliche, but you have to find the silver lining in any negative thing. And who was it, Napoleon Hill, that said for every adversity there's an equal benefit or whatever.
Right.
I look at it now in coaching. I do a lot of interviews like this where I go on people's shows and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, my story's kind of boring because I've actually interviewed people who have been in prison, who have been through like almost dying, like on their deathbed, all these crazy stories. I'm like, I went through a closure in real estate, that's pretty boring compared to some of these backstories. But my story would be different if I hadn't gone through that closure. And I grew up middle class, typical lifestyle, and I became a coach. You're like, oh, okay, great interview. Thank you, Mark.
Let's dig into what challenges some of your best coaching clients have experienced as they begin to scale. What have they come to you with and said, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was going to happen as I started becoming more successful and taking on more clients?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I had a call today that touched on this. The coach is getting more clients, which is great. Now she doesn't have the time to do the things that she did to get the clients. Same thing used to happen in real estate. Somebody would prospect, work really hard. Then all of a sudden, I got all this new business, listings, new buyers, and all that stuff. I'm good. Then they would sell all those and, oh, shoot, I don't have any new clients that come in to replace it. So I think that's a problem with coaches. They think, oh, I'm good now. I don't have to keep putting out engaging content. I don't have to keep doing offers or webinars or whatever because I'm good. And one of the things that I do now that I've make a quote comeback. I've made a comeback in business, but it's a paranoid comeback. I don't want to rest on my laurels. I'm always grinding hard, and there hasn't been one day since I started this in early 2014 that I haven't worked. I was in Mexico in February. I went with my cousin. I'm like, yep, I'm going to need an hour in the hotel room on my laptop, go on the beach, have a drink, have fun, but I'm doing my work. So there hasn't been one day that I've taken my foot off the gas because I've been there from having money to losing money to having money again. I don't want to lose it again. So I'm a very paranoid optimist.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those life lessons. So when they start running out of time to do fulfillment, what do you recommend that they do?
Well, probably the best thing is to probably raise their prices.
Okay.
I just finished reading, Sean D'Souza has some great books, Psychotactics, I think that's his company. And that's what he says too. The problem with charging low amounts may make you feel good if you can fill up things, but you don't have any time to yourself. So my recommendation for any coach like that, if you're booked solid, you got a waiting list, all that other stuff, there's obviously demand for what you're doing. You probably have to bump your fees up, and odds are they have to be bumped up considerably. I do it every 6 months. I'm in the process of going through another one. Not always the easiest thing to do because you get thinking, the little voice in your head says, oh, you're going to lose all your clients, or all this stuff, but it's something that should be done. So my first thing would recommend to that person would be to restructure their business to increase their fees and stuff. Yeah.
Makes sense. If you're listening and you run a professional services firm or consultancy, same thing. That advice goes for you too. our last question, I guess, what is the biggest they don't know what they don't know thing that you're like, oh man, I wish I could just install this automatically into all of your brains. You know this.
Well, I mean, this is applicable to coaches, but I think also across the board for people who would be listening to this. When they jump into the business, they think that they're going to be spending the majority of their time coaching, doing what they want to do. 80% of their time, 90% of the time will be coaching. And then 10 or 20% will be doing a little bit of paperwork and responding to a few emails, but the bulk of the time will be coaching. And it's flipped. You're lucky if you're coaching 20% of the time. It's probably less. Most of your time spent finding the clients. And the same goes for people who would be listening to this as well. The other thing too is a lot of people they know that they're in business, but they don't treat it like a business. They don't act like entrepreneurs. They don't respect themselves. They don't have boundaries set up.
Right.
They're doing, we could do 5 shows on this, but they're letting people pick their brain. They're doing virtual coffee chats that have absolutely no purpose except to waste everyone's time. And they're just not being smart about it. So whenever I talk to somebody, if I meet a new coach, if I just met you and you're a coach, I wouldn't say, hey, Jason, why did you become a coach? I would say, why did you start a coaching business? I combine those 2 words, coaching and business, because a lot of people get into coaching come from HR backgrounds, teaching, or things that they never had to sell or they weren't in business before. I want to stress to them, hey, you're a business. As much so as a coach or more so than a coach, you're an entrepreneur, you're a business.
Right. Yeah, there's a post on my blog at salestactics.org about how much time should you spend prospecting. And I've laid it out pretty much as you say, especially in the early going when nobody knows who you are and you don't get any referrals and you just have to grind it out to find clients. It's going to take you a ton of your time. And if you're spending your time playing around with your website or cleaning the company washroom, instead of going and finding clients, you will die.
Working on your logo for 2 years. Well, I see it in mine. There's a fork in the road that you have to choose a way. So with coaching, but other businesses too, you could either go the paid advertising route, but unfortunately a lot of, say, solopreneurs, coaches they don't have the money to throw into that. So you got to go either the paid advertising route or the organic route, but you have to choose one or a combination of the two. I see a lot of coaches say, well, I don't have money to throw into Facebook ads, but it's too much work to put out that organic content. So they're stuck in the middle. They run into a tree between those 2 paths, and that's not good either. Here's the other silver lining from going through the business closure and all that crap that happened. I didn't have a war chest to throw into Facebook ads. So I had to make up for that when I started, and I still do today. I still do a ton of organic. I had to make up with it with organic effort, roll up my sleeves, and that helped me become better, refine my message more quickly than if I was just throwing thousands of dollars into Facebook ads.
Great. Well, some very powerful stories and tips especially for, I think, solo consultants wanting to scale their business. That's a good mesh up here. How can people find you, Marc? What's the best way for them to connect with you if they're like, hey, I like what this guy's saying and I want to learn more?
The main site is naturalborncoaches.com, or there's the Facebook group, as you mentioned, thecoachingjungle.com. Thecoachingjungle.com will get you there.
Awesome. Okay, well, I appreciate you being here today, Marc.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason.